Welcome to the 50th anniversary celebration of Women's Studies, now Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Washington, Seattle. Women's Studies at the UW began as a collaborative effort between community activists, faculty, deans, and students in the early 1970s amidst of great societal unrest over the Vietnam War, civil rights, the Red Power movement, and the women's movement. In 1971, community activists Julie Coriel and Anne Schwiesel-Hirondell proposed the first syllabus in women's studies called Women's Studies 101 in the College of Arts and Sciences. Undergraduate and graduate students at UW, including Lexi Evans, Karen Rudolph, and Barbara Winslow, were some of the earliest students interested in women's studies. The first director was Mary Logan Rothschild, then a graduate student in history at UW, who later went on to teach at Arizona State University. Women's studies would not exist without feminist activists working to make it happen.
In conjunction with all of the civil rights, human rights protests that sort of built out of that era, you had universities and colleges introducing what were considered political action academics. This is the era of the introduction of ethnic studies, women's studies to the academy as really a way to appease the students. The students were rioting, the students were unhappy, the students were questioning the value of the university and its application to the real world.
When Women's Studies was established as a program, it was the first of its kind in the Pacific Northwest and the second in the U.S. after San Diego State University. In the early 1970s, no independent women's studies major existed at UW. Interested students took women's studies courses through general studies.
When this program first started, it was not a mainstream program in the university. And so the people that came to it were people that were also kind of questioning the mainstream in some way, or being willing to study something that was new and more marginal.
At the same time that younger women were becoming interested in feminism, so were the women who were already here. So there were women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
There were all these senior women who had fought to get to the top of their positions in their departments, and they were willing to come on board and help out. They're the ones who became the standing committee, but nobody wanted to step forward if they didn't have rank. But there were people, including the president, who didn't think this was an important thing to do.
Particularly with this women's studies program, it really was intended, I think, to be a very short-term process. For that reason, the early faculty of the program, I was the second person, Sue Ellen Jacobs was first. We were both hired as half-time in women's studies and half-time in what the university thought of as a real discipline. Really, the sense I got was that this had to be the way it was done, and I had to be not a feminist scholar, but a traditional psychology scholar, because I needed a home when the program was disbanded.
In the 1980s, women's studies at the UW persisted, despite budget cuts and a national climate ripe for anti-feminist backlash.
In fact, when I took over as director, the big issue was, at that time, there was a huge budget crisis in the university. They were eliminating programs and departments.
Ronald Reagan was the first president that did what is called targeted budget cuts. So he didn't say to NSF, cut 10% of your budget. He said, NSF, when you cut 10% of your budget, you're going to cut this program and this program and this program. And they were all the programs that I would have supported my research. right?
I think for 2 or 3 of the deans, we literally ran bi-weekly educational forums on what women's studies was. I mean, it was ridiculous that, you would never ask biology or psychology or English to explain their value to the university. And we would, it would go on and on and on. And then they would change deans and we'd do it all over again.
I get phone calls from people saying, they're going to cut women's studies. They're going to cut it. And I never believed that they would. Yes. I felt that politically this would have been a very stupid move. Everything that you could say the mood of the times was against this. How would it look if you're cutting out everything? It's not bad enough that you cut out the programs that did have women faculty. It would have been a huge public relations disaster.
The development of curricula, along with establishing a long-term presence at the university, was key. During this time, Women's Studies expanded its list of adjunct faculty, building allies across the institution while continuing to foster scholarship with an activist edge. Despite budget crises at the university, Women's Studies survived and hosted the 1985 National Women's Studies Association Conference.
We had 1,500 people come on campus from all over the country. And everybody in the program was involved and people in the community were involved.
The early, very, very early years of the NWSA, National Women's Studies Association, the conferences were much more, it was almost like going to political rallies. They were much more activist and not as scholarly as they are now. Now it's more of a blend.
Furthermore, the development of intersectional scholarship challenged the whiteness of women's studies and the assumption of a singular U.S.-based understanding of feminism. With boundary-shattering publications that focus on women of color, like 1981's This Bridge Called My Back and 1982's All the Women Are White, All the Blacks Are Men, But Some of Us Are Brave, Black Women's Studies, interdisciplinarity and intersectionality took center stage. In 1988, Women's Studies hired its first woman of color, Dr. Shirley Yee, in a tenure-track position. The 1990s were marked by conscious efforts at diversification in students and faculty at the University of Washington. By the 1990s, Women's Studies would make major strides in becoming a stronger and more foundationally institutionalized at the University of Washington. Major events included the establishing of the independent major in 1995, achieving department status in 1996, the approval of the PhD degree in 1997, and the admission of the first cohort of PhD students in 1998.
One of the weaknesses of the Women's Studies program at the time was that it didn't have a stable institutional home. Well, that was also one of its strengths, right? From not being embedded in the system, you could offer more robust critiques of the system because you weren't implicating yourself in it, right? At the same, one of the things that concerned a lot of the supporters of the program and then department was just to stabilize it so that it could continue to offer a space for women's studies and feminist scholars to do their work.
The transnational pulse of globalization reverberated locally in Seattle through various social political movements and tensions.
So late 90s, 2000s, there was a lot going on. 1997, I teach development studies, so the Asian financial crisis had just happened. 1999, there was a huge protest against globalization, the battle for Seattle.
I even have a prop. It was the Seattle '99 protest of the century, so is that in there?
Shortly afterwards, 9/11 happened, and there was a huge protest against the war, which we knew was coming, so all of us took part in that as well. The continuing issues of structural adjustment policies, the ways in which, global politics was playing out. In the department, we also felt some of these pressures.
In the late 1990s, the hiring of faculty, including Priti Ramamurthy, Luana Ross, and Angela Ginorio, amplified feminisms working at the intersections of women and gender studies outside of the United States, while elevating indigenous nationhood and sovereignty as key feminist issues.
My name is Luana Ross. I'm Salish from the Flathead Indian Reservation in Montana. Some of the resistance I was running into has to do with, and this could be anywhere, it is certainly not just the University of Washington, the general public and people in academia not getting the nationhood piece and the sovereignty piece, just plain not getting that, and how important that is to curriculum, and that there is a basic understanding of sovereignty and nationhood, and how that, if you're looking at intersectionality, if that's not a huge piece and a very critical variable, then in terms of indigenous feminisms, you've just left out a huge piece.
Interdisciplinarity and transnationalism extended from the 1990s into the 2000s, with courses and scholarship mapping out the meanings of concepts like transnational, globalization, and intersectionality, along with the importance of critique.
There were a lot of debates within the department at that time and around the time of my hire about the relationship and actually divides between women of color and transnational feminisms.
Tensions, because some people felt that women of color was being not given as much attention and resources as the transnational.
But how could you do transnational studies in a way that wasn't framing domestic U.S. women of color as a versus, right?
And all of the ways in which women's studies had been criticized rightly by both women of color and working class women for not creating frameworks and perspectives that theorize or understand their experiences. But it was a really exciting time and a hard and challenging time to be aware of our own aspects of privilege and also to bring students along in that.
Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Washington continues to maintain a commitment to not be isolated from other areas that reflect the department's commitment to social justice. Luana Ross anchored the merging of the social sciences and the arts through filmmaking and documentary media productions. The Native Voices Center at the University of Washington brought together students, faculty, and independent producers to create documentaries and media research that contributes to the understanding, strengthening, and support of Indigenous people and communities. This work undoubtedly opened the doors for faculty hired in the 2000s, whose work also centered social sciences and the arts, including Sasha Suling Welland, Michelle Havel-Payan, Amanda Locke-Swar, Regina Lee, Cricket Keating, Bettina Judd, and Kemi Adeyemi. Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies continues to be grounded in collaborative efforts between faculty, students, and community activists. What will the next 50 years bring? Our communities will guide us in continuing to learn how growth happens on the edges.
La liberación del pueblo